Hi, welcome to a new video. I want to talk about how I keep track of my projects.
You can't say you didn't see this coming. Finally got some inspiration right again.
Welcome back to my channel, or welcome. If this is your first video that you're watching of me, then hi. Today I want to talk about how I keep track of all of my projects because I am someone that writes multiple projects at the same time, or at least works on them at the same time, and I have a lot of projects that I want to work on. I try and not work on more than 2 at a time, but yeah, it's a struggle. So as I've said, I usually try and not work on more than 2 projects at the same time, just because 2 is usually like okay for me. I can work on one if I get stuck, work on the other, and like do it alternatively on what I want to work on, and also maybe if I'm gonna send out one, I can work on the other. I don't try and work on any more projects except for sometimes when I do like a 10K day and I just want to draft something new or something that I already have in my idea shelf in a Scrivener document, then I work on those. But other than that, I try to work on 2 projects at the same time. So for me personally, those 2 projects would be my more or less historical setting book and then also my project Sky. So those 2 are the ones that I try to work on, and those are the ones that I want to work on in 2023. So yeah, how do I actually do that? So if you're like me and you want to work on multiple projects at the same time, one of the things that I would suggest is definitely making sure you don't let yourself get distracted by working on other projects. Just stick to the 2 that you're doing and then make that work. So how I keep track of my projects in general, so like everything, is I have a Scrivener file that has just ideas. So that is my idea shelf, and that is where I keep all of the things I don't want to be working on right now. Then for the 2 that I do want to work on, I have 2 separate Scrivener documents for those. So I have one for my historical project and then one for my project Sky, and that is kind of where I keep track of everything that goes into those stories. So for my historical project, I basically have the previous drafts sort of in that list. I have different files for different drafts, but I have the main file in there, and what I do is I create a different kind of document, text document per chapter. That is how I like to structure it. I know some people do it per scene, which is what I've done for Project Sky, sort of, which is like scene versus chapter. I have to kind of figure out how I'm gonna structure that, but we'll get to that at some other point. As for my historical project, that is also like in the Scrivener file. That is where I keep all of my historical kind of research as well, and character stuff that I have, or timeline stuff that I want to keep track of, or in general things. So I have like one file that is just hair ideas, one file that is dress ideas, one file that is just like facts of like historical facts that I want to make sure that I get right. One of them is like comments that I get from other people or things that I should be looking into. Those are kind of the things that I keep track of in that Scrivener file. On Project Sky side, I, for example, also have my character sheets in there, so I know who is who and like which character is like doing what kind of thing. That is what I should be getting more familiar with and doing more of, I feel, with that project, because I don't want my points of view to sound the same, because I am writing that from multiple people's point of view. I want to make sure that I really make them known and not have people confused on who they're reading from, like whose perspective they're reading from. So that's something that I want to get better at. But I do have like references for the characters in there, so that if I can't figure out a name of, for example, the tour manager, I will reference that and be like, who was the tour manager again? Like, what was his name? And then hopefully that can like work itself out. I honestly hope that this audio is okay and like my neighbors doing stuff is not gonna be too loud on this freaking audio, because I'm hating it and I want to record my videos. But here we are, hopefully making this work. So other than my character stuff, I also have research for like locations that I could go on tour with Project Sky. I also have different research on music stuff or other research that I want to get done or things that I want to reference in the book. That is all in that file as well. And then I also have a file where I have all of the song ideas for this book, because my main character in this book is a musician and I want to make sure I kind of write songs out of her point of view. So I have some song ideas in there as well, which are different files in this little folder. In general, I like tracking things. So I also have, for example, a Trello board where I've put most of my books on there. I feel like I should update that, but most of my books are on there. And what I did is kind of divide them into where they are with like word count wise, or if it's a first draft, or what I'm kind of doing with that project. I haven't used that in a while because I feel like I'm just focusing on these two and I'm kind of letting everything else slide and I don't want to work on them, so I don't actually update the Trello board. But that is how I used to keep track of where my books are with word count stuff and kind of where they are in the writing process. And other things that I do is I track my word count per project. So I have a spreadsheet where I keep track of all of my word count, and I do that per project. So I can see kind of how much I wrote in this project versus this project in like a month or in the full year. That's kind of what I track, and I like tracking all of those things, so I'm not gonna stop doing that. In general, I also really enjoy having checklists. So what I do now is I use my bullet journal kind of as a checklist system, so I can check off what I'm doing with not only my books but also my YouTube videos or household stuff or admin stuff, just life stuff in general. I keep track of all of that kind of in my bullet journal on what I need to do, and also when I'm going to be able to do them or when I need to do them, and that helps me keep track of what needs to happen when. Although I like checklists, I don't usually put deadlines on myself with things that have to get done for my books, which I feel like I might have to do a little bit more of to kind of really say, okay, this is when I'm gonna do this is when I'm gonna do that. Whereas now I've basically just been, what do I feel like? And do I feel like doing this? Yes or no? I should be a little bit more strict with myself with working on these things to actually finish these books, because otherwise they're never gonna get finished, and that is not something that I want. I want to be able to finish these. But yeah. One of the things that's helped me with my drafting is kind of figure out how much word count I'm kind of aiming for, but also more or less having some sort of outline in place so I know where I'm going and how much I have to still do. That kind of keeps track of where I'm at in the story and what still needs to happen. Whereas with editing, usually for me it helps to kind of have a whole list of all the different chapters that I need to go through, for example, and then I can tick them off as I go, which I very much like, because then I can tick off what needs to be done, what has been done, and kind of clearly see what still needs to be done, which is something that I really enjoy with the checklist system. So that's definitely something that I do. So in general, kind of finding a system that works for you, because for me, for example, my checklists work and having a Scrivener file works. If you don't have Scrivener or you don't want to spend money, then I guess you could use something like Google Docs, which is very like nice in a way. Like it works very much like Word, but it's online. You can reference it from multiple platforms and it's free if you sign up for like a Google account. And I've used that in the past as well, and it's not, you know, it's not bad. You can still use that. You can, for example, also create different files for different things and put them in a folder. So you can do like a research document, you can do an outline document, you can do different documents for different chapters if that's what you want to do, or just create one document and have all your chapters in there, which is what I used to do when I was younger and I just had Word and I didn't have anything else. Just in general, trying to kind of have some sort of plan or staying a little bit organized in the way that you structure things or you reference things. So for me, having some research document where I can just dump all the things I think I might need to reference in helps, because then you can search it back. Whereas if I have searched something and figured out the answer was yes or no in that particular moment and I continued writing and didn't write it down, I could come back when I'm editing and be like, did I research this? Was the answer yes or no? Should I research it again? Whereas if I have it written down somewhere, I can just kind of reference that and be like, oh, okay, the answer was yes. Okay, cool. I can move on again, instead of me trying to find that source that I found the first time, especially if you're gonna spend, you know, quite some time with these books, because you don't necessarily get them done overnight. So it's always useful to kind of have that as a reference, which is what I try. I should get better at it, but it's what I try to kind of do with the research part. And then in general, just keeping track of your different files and make sure you back them up is also one that you should be doing. One of the things I have used in the past, which I'm not currently using as much, is next to the Trello board that I don't use a lot, is also Notion. I've used Notion with different templates to kind of figure out what needs to happen for different projects, and I've also used that for like my videos, so I can kind of check off what I have done for each video and all of that. But it also works for books. I can check off kind of what I've done or research that I've done and put them in there, or questions that I feel like I should research. Just like these kinds of things I can keep track of in like some kind of system, and I have done it in Trello, I have done it in Notion, and now I'm just kind of doing it on paper or in that specific Scrivener file where I just have a document of questions to look up or things to do, things to research kind of thing, where I just put in the things I might want to check out, or what I do is put a comment to myself. So when I'm going through, I can reference back those comments and deal with it at the time I'm editing so that I can at least get my draft done. But now that I'm kind of in the editing phase on both of these in a way, I feel like I should continue drafting my Project Sky and actually finish up that draft. But once that's done, I am in editing on both of these, which, you know, is something I struggle with, but kind of keeping track of what chapters I've done, what comments I've kind of looked into, and actually keeping track of the research I'm doing as I'm going through the draft is something that I really can hammer on that you should be doing, because that will help you and set you up for the future. So that is a little bit how I keep track of my projects. And then, as I said, for the project that I'm not working on actively, I have some of them in Scrivener files of their own, and then a lot just in kind of a idea shelf document, which is where I'm gonna keep them until I want to work on them, because I feel like if I'm gonna give them their own separate Scrivener file, I'm gonna be wanting to work on them, and I shouldn't, because I should just focus on the things I want to focus on right now and then get to those at some point. So what I do sometimes, which is, yes, it's a strange sentence. What I sometimes do is go back to the idea shelf and actually work on those projects, but I will do it in like, let me just brain dump stuff, or let me get this out of my system, or let me do a 10K day on one of the projects that I'm not actively working on, but then just wanting to draft. And that is sometimes what I do, because I really do enjoy drafting and kind of figuring out the story and brainstorming, and the whole kind of coming up with the idea phase is very much something that I enjoy doing. So sometimes that's just what I need to do, and I need to get some words out, and I need to get my hands like writing and typing without me having to like research and do it slowly and edit this like little part and figure this little thing out. Like, sometimes I just want to keep going, and I just want to like write, and I want to just get things out on paper, and I want to just make some fast progress, which I feel a 10K day is sometimes what I need, because then I can just get everything out of my system and feel like I've accomplished something. Whereas with editing, the progress is so much slower, at least for me, because I'm not fast at editing, and I feel like that's something I need to get better at. But the progress seems very slow for me when I'm editing. Whereas with words on a page, you can actually see the progress. So for me, that is sometimes what I need to do. So that is what I do with those projects, even though they're not the main ones I'm focusing on. But with me switching projects, the only thing that I need to be kind of mindful of is making sure that people sound different. I feel like, obviously, because I'm the writer, it can very much sound like I am writing this, and I don't always know if like my voice is very distinct between different characters. So with switching books, I also need to make sure that that mood is like right for the book. But what I try to remind myself of is that there's editing, and at some point I am gonna edit this. So I just, you know, I enjoy the drafting phase and then just get it out, and then we'll figure it out once I edit. But yeah, sometimes just getting the idea out is nice. So with me doing that, I have a lot of different kind of brain dumps in my idea shelf files, so that if I do want to switch projects and I do want to do something different, there's already kind of an outline of what my initial thoughts were, and then I can just kind of jump into that project. So that goes back to having some sort of outline helps. At least for me, it helps. I'm not trying to say you should or should not plot. It's very much up to you, I just kind of have a general idea of like, okay, these are the characters, this is kind of the story that I want to tell, and this is kind of the events that I sometimes have. But how we get there is usually something that I figure out as I go, and not something that I have in advance. Sometimes I do plot it out very, very detailed, but that's more when I already have like at least 10,000 words or more of a brain dump. So yeah. So that's a little bit on how I keep track of all of my projects. I really don't know how beneficial this is for you guys, but maybe it gives you an insight into how I do things, and that can help you do your things. If you have some different advice or different things that you think would be useful for other people to know, leave them in the comments so that we can share it with everyone and not just me trying to share things, but you guys can also participate in sharing your knowledge and what you do, for example, or what your process is, because then we can all learn from each other and we can help each other out. So I hope that this video was enjoyable for you to watch, or at least gave you some kind of insight in my brain, I guess, or how I do things. And if you have liked this video, then I hope you stick around for my next ones, and I hope to see you there. I brought my notebook for some notes because I definitely had to write down some things before getting into this video. So other than